So if we take a look at the UV texture editor now, for this, select it. If we want to texture this car accurately, in terms of distinguishing between the side, the front, the top, etc. In the UV texture editor, what we need to do is remap or rearrange these UVs to suit the object that we're using, and that'll make texturing much easier. Okay, so what I'll do is do the car, redo the UVs a side at a time. So I'll select, say, the side of the car. Again, you can see how the UVs are. You can't really tell what's what in here. If I go to create planar mapping, check the axis that I want to remap, which is the x-axis in this case. Go to X and apply. Okay, it's worked, so you can sort of distinguish between what face is what with the texture handles coming up, but it's the shape of the car is squashed within the grey area, which isn't a problem. It just means that it's not in proportion. So if you do want to keep things in proportion when you're UV mapping them, let me just go back to planar mapping, is keep image width height ratio. Just have that, make sure that's checked. So when you apply, proportions are correct there. Okay, so if I move this temporarily out of the way, what I'll do now is do perhaps the other side of the car. Okay, so again, same sort of thing, select the faces that you need to, then create planar mapping. Now this is going to be exactly the same as the other one, so I'll just keep it on X. And there's the other side. Now the reason I'm moving them out, spreading them out, so to speak, is because if I don't, they'll all be on top of one another, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to distinguish what's what. I mean, there's ways around it, but for the time being, this is probably the easiest thing to do. Okay, so next what I'll do is the top view. So it's the hood, or the bonnet, top, and the back. That's all that would be the top. Yep. And again, create planar mapping. Options, in this case, the correct axis for those faces would be the y-axis, so up and down. So I change it to the y, keep everything else where it is, and apply. And again, temporarily move these out of the way. Okay, so you can see at the top of the car. So what I'll do, just to make things easier, is move them to the side. So we already have one side of the car, or the UVs for one side of the car. We have the UVs for the other side of the car, and we have the UVs for the top of the car. Again, when I'm finished, I need to put all these UV bits, so to speak, back within this area, this grey space area. So I might need to sort of rescale and sort of juggle things around a little bit to make them fit. But anyway, let's see what we've got to do. So we've got the top, the two sides, I guess the front, and would they be the same? No, I'll do them differently. I'll do the front and the back as separate. Sometimes you'll have options about which faces to include in which projection. Again, it doesn't really make a big difference as long as you sort of understand what's sort of coming up here and use that as the basis for texture creation. Okay, so I'll do the front, and for the front, I'll have the front of the car and the windscreen. Okay, so I'll go create planar mapping. In this case, it'll be the Z-axis. That is the correct orientation. Apply, and there's the front section. There's the car and the windscreen section. And the last section, I think, that's why it's good to sort of, as you're doing it, move them out of the way, because you know exactly what you've done and what you need to do. I'll do the back of the car now, so planar mapping again, same axis as the front of the car, it's the Z axis, and apply, and move them out of the way. Okay, so what are these guys? These are, that's the bottom. Well, I don't actually need the bottom because we're never going to see it in this case, so I'll just select the bottom faces and just simply delete them. Okay, so let's see what we've got. We've got the UVs for the side, for the other side. That's the top. That's the front windscreen. The other bit is... Okay, now sometimes if you do get things that overlap, and in this case it's not too bad, but sometimes it might be tricky to know which UV belongs to which. What you can do is if you can identify at least one of the UVs, in this case, if you hold the control key down, right click, and it opens up this menu. If you go to shell, then basically what it does is selects all those UVs that are connected together basically. So now that they're all selected, I can go to the move tool and move that away from that section that it was overlapping. So let's just see which bit that is. That's the front. Okay, so this section is the front window. There we go.